What's up guys, Sal here, and we're going to be introducing the AceCast. It's going to be a regular podcast from members of the Ace Games team, and today I'm joined by Fastfeet, Metro, and Mione.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Fast Feed here. We decided we're just gonna kind of go over what we our kind of qualifications, I guess, what you could say, what our past gaming, and starting with me, I have been playing World of Warcraft basically since it has been released. Been playing since vanilla. Played a hunter. Sucked it up pretty hard in vanilla when I was like 12. Rather than that, been playing ever since. Been playing just about any other game as well. But played some Counter-Strike Source, some other stuff like that. But mostly been sticking to the MMO genre. Been really enjoying it. Rather than that, just been chilling with these fellow guys here. And rather than that, I figured rest of them, let them introduce themselves. So go ahead, Mione.
Hey guys, Mione here, and I'm one of the directors, obviously, at Ace Games. And my history in MMOs is pretty vast, really. It all started really with the Burning Crusade. I played a Warlock at 70, and ever since then, I've played for about 6 years, I think, on on World of Warcraft. And more recently, I've got into stuff like Terra Online and hopefully Guild Wars 2. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what those games are going to be like when I can get some testing done. So, Metro?
Yeah, it's Metro. I've been leading guilds, been raiding for a while on WoW, but I got the game 11 years ago, the day it came out. Been playing it ever since. Haven't really played a lot of different MMOs, but I've definitely followed them. Everybody here has been playing them, and I've been watching them play them. So I feel like I have a diverse, different perspective for some of the games, especially like the leadership, what happens in the games, how you complete the games, kind of thing. So that's about it.
And me personally, I started off playing MMOs a while ago. I started off with WoW and RuneScape, unfortunately. And soon after that quit RuneScape and started playing WoW more sort of hardcore, been high-end raiding, Ret Paladin for a while. Also tried out a lot of other MMOs. I tried out Star Wars, Terra, Guild Wars 2. I just like to have a vast opinion on MMOs, even though generally I always end up sticking to WoW. I still definitely give them a good go before I give them the yes or the no, basically. So what we're going to be talking about today, if you haven't already guessed, is going to be the sort of MMO at the moment, like what MMOs are about, how they fail or how they succeed, basically the state of MMOs. And we're going to be kicking that off with the best part, the state of MMOs at the moment. So, what do people think? Like, MMOs seem to... WoW is obviously the big MMO that when you mention MMO, people already know you're going to be talking about WoW or something along those lines. Why do we think other MMOs fail or succeed?
Yeah, well, if I can go first, I mean, this is astounding to me. Absolutely, it's resonant beyond all measure. It's unreal how WoW has just dominated the market for like 8-10 years now. Basically, ever since the game was released, talked about being released, it's dominated the market. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing. It's good for Blizzard. Right? Obviously, we agree with that, but it's not necessarily a great thing for the genre. And I think that's because these other games, they're trying to be too much like WoW. And if people don't want to play the game, if they don't want to play WoW, they want something new, these games have to have something new. And unfortunately, some of them just don't. They make like a carbon copy of the combat, the quests, everything, and that doesn't fly. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Basically, what I was thinking is like the new games like Rift and things like that. Like, yeah, Metro, you're right. Like, it's a carbon copy, but the thing about it is like they do try to introduce new things. It's just the crappy thing about it is that when it comes to like getting the like player base, they do have these new things, but they have such like a little player base, and they can't keep them. And then eventually, what happens is WoW just like takes whatever good idea that they had in Rift or whatever MMO that came out at the time, and then just like kind of consumes it into itself. So it's like any good idea that does kind of come out of any other MMO, I feel, does kind of just get absorbed by World of Warcraft, sadly. Like, WoW is like the Google of the United States or of the world, I guess. They dominate so hard, and any game that attempts to come out and tries to replace it just kind of gets owned, just like Star Wars did. But I mean, there's still a player base for Star Wars. It's just everybody was like, oh, it's gonna be a WoW killer, and well, guess what? No.
Yeah, with you saying like they all have good features about them, like MMOs are always going to be very similar. They're always going to have very similar things, but because WoW doesn't have any competition, it allows them to get away with whatever they want, pretty much. Like at the moment, they charge a lot for server transfers and stuff like that because they know people will pay for it because there's no major competition. And if there is any MMOs out there that are a threat, WoW generally does something to counteract that. Even though they don't really need to. For example, when Terra beta was out, or when Terra launch was out, I can't remember which one it was, Blizzard casually did a Diablo 3 beta test, an open beta test, on the same day. They like announced it like 2 days before. It was like, what?
Yeah, I agree. They certainly have the market. Now, I know, Yoni, you played some Terra. Siler, you guys played it as well. I'm sure everyone here played a little Star Wars right now. When you hopped into the game, first thing, what made you want to play that game, Yoni? Could you just explain to me like why you picked up Terra?
Well, obviously I quit WoW mainly because my guild split up, like most guilds do in games. People get tired of a game and then they get bored, and our guild split up. So I was like, well, let's find some alternatives, and finding alternatives to something that you've played for 6 years is very, very hard. And Terra kind of got my attention. I think it was last year. I was playing the Korean version, which took me a long time to download, but the thing that really interested me was the Twitch-based combat system that they've got. Now, essentially what that means is you're not like targeting a boss or a mob and just pressing like 1, 1, 1, 2, you know. You're actually clicking those same buttons, but you're having to move around, and you know, you've got actual arcs of fireballs and stuff which you have to aim, and that's what really interested me the most. But the problem with Terra is everything else about it is a carbon copy, but it's done poorly. Like they don't seem to have the support that WoW has, and I think WoW has only got that because, you know, they've tried to polish things for so long. You can't beat that polish, no matter how you try. So no new game is really going to be able to match it, I don't think. What I'm trying to say is, like, they try like this world raid system, which I was talking about earlier on when we were doing the live stream, where somebody was like, well, could you tell me a bit about Terra? And, well, the end game at the moment is essentially PvE is non-existent. You do 2 dungeons, which are hard mode 5-mans, to get the best gear in the game. And then, apart from that, there's a raid system that doesn't work properly, where it scales where if you've got like 500 players fighting a dragon, the dragon becomes invincible. So, you know, and there's no PvP. They promised PvP, but they couldn't deliver. It's just little things like that that make these games, no matter how hard they try to beat WoW, they will never do it. The only thing that WoW can, you know, the only thing that will beat WoW is WoW itself, in my opinion.
Well, I'd like to think an MMO will come out that will be able to, like, maybe not beat WoW, but be on the same par, like have a big audience. But the thing that WoW has that every other MMO doesn't have is everything. Like, it applies to all audiences. The casual, the PvPers, the PvEers, the hardcore PvEers, the competitive players. Like, it has everything. Even though it doesn't really have that, what, like Guild Wars 2 has, where you can just jump into it and kind of do all the higher level stuff straight away without having to put some work in. That's the only thing it really lacks. But apart from that, it's very quick to level up now anyways, and they're removing like these long grinds and things like that to make it more appeal to the casual players, while keeping in all the sort of hardcore things that the higher end players enjoy.
And it's that polish that you can't replace, you know.
Well, see, you bring that up, but I think more importantly than any of those things that you spoke about is, you know, Siler said it, just the people, right? You need people. It's a fucking MMO. It's called Massively Multiplayer Online. If you don't have a massively multiplayer community, you cannot play the game. Now, I remember Terra did something like that with launch, right? They opened up their servers huge. Didn't they, like, expand the server just greatly? Yeah, no, that was a good play. I'll tell you why that was a good play. Because they knew that people bitch about the servers and it was going to be shit logging in. So they let everyone do that now. And then later on, they could save on space by consolidating when a lot of the original people who came to play end up quitting. That was a smart move by them, but still, they're thinking in the right direction. Other games are not. Star Wars was not thinking in the right direction. They had a very poor system of moving characters. Apparently, the customer service was abysmal. I can't attest to this, but I don't know if anyone play Star Wars and have any problems with that kind of shit.
Yeah, I had massive problems. I actually forgot my, I know it sounds strange, but my password for my account. I don't know what I set it at. I think I was drunk at the time, but ringing them up was really weird. Like, it was like talking to, I don't know, just a normal call center in India or somewhere. It was terrible. You know, they didn't understand what you were saying. It's just...
What I ended up doing was, because when you log into Star Wars, you have like 4 or 5 secret questions set up. So you'll type in your password and it'll be like, what is the answer to this secret question? And yeah, I forgot one because I tend to not put the answer that you'd normally put down for a secret question. I know it's stupid, but it just kind of helps me think that I'm doing things more secure. And at the time I didn't have a landline, so I had to use my mobile. And I couldn't ring the EU call centre because it charged me on my mobile, so I had to purchase Skype credit to ring the US version. And I was sat in queue for like 5 hours. It was, and then just to get some woman who obviously couldn't understand me because of my British accent, because she was US.
Yeah,
it just felt poor.
I think the best thing about the customer service was when at the end of every call they say, "Let the force be with you." That's the only thing I'm going to say about that. That's a plus.
So they certainly, I mean, they had some good things, right? All these games come out with good ideas, but the problem is people don't stick with them. That's the big problem that we're talking about here. If you have a good game and people don't play it, you have Skyrim. You know what I mean? There is no massively multiplayer aspect. It doesn't matter how good the game itself is. If people don't fucking play it, it's not a fucking MMO. That's just how it works, you know? So that's where WoW succeeds. There are so many people that play WoW just because they have friends. And I don't care... I don't give a shit about anybody who says, "Oh, it's not a cat." You know, there are people who play the game only because they have friends who play the game, and there are people who play the game only quit the game because their friends quit. It's a fact of life. I don't care what you say about why you quit. People quit. More people quit because their friends quit or they don't have people to play with than any other reason. And if you think think you have some high opinion about the game's success on that topic, you're a fucking idiot. You're wrong. Everybody quits an MMO because they don't have friends. What were you saying, Fast?
And I think every time that I end up saying like a game not fail but not succeed, I guess you could say, is mostly because it's always the end game. I feel like every time a game like falls off or dies off, it's because it doesn't have the end game to keep people attracted to the game. Like, you always see a game that comes out, like, let's take Star Wars for example. Like, Star Wars everybody was playing Star Wars when it first came out, right? Like, everybody stopped playing WoW for like the week that Star Wars came out, and everybody was hardcore into leveling. You know, they loved the the cinematics, they loved the storyline. But then when it came to the end game, it was like, well, okay, there's not much to do. So it's like, I feel like when a game doesn't succeed the way it should, it's mostly, I feel, because of the end game content is not there to keep the audience captured into the game that they're playing.
Yeah, exactly. The people don't want to fucking play the game because there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Definitely. I mean, it's like, if there's no end game to keep you attracted to whatever game you're playing, then what's the point? You're gonna lose the will to play the game, and you're gonna go play something else that's more entertaining to you, because you want to play a game that's fun, entertaining, that you could play with friends, just like you said, and enjoy to do, and still have things to do. Like, that's what WoW did. Like, right? They have achievements. So even if you are completely done with the game, or with the content, you could go do achievements. You can go enjoy that. You have, all the different kinds of you can go do cooking, alchemy. There's so much stuff that you could do in that game, even if you're not, like, say, raiding, or even if you're a PvPer. There's always, you could always keep doing PvP. You're always trying to strive to get that higher, rank. And I think that's just what other games are lacking. There's just nothing. There's nothing there to capture them or to keep them captured into.
And with WoW, with Blizzard in general, they make very, very smart business choices. I have to, for one, they do what the players want. Even though some people may disagree and be like, no, they've not brought back this, they've not given me that. They make the game easier to jump into. For example, like there's the Dungeon Finder and stuff like that. Yes, it may ruin the community on the server, but most servers are dead that don't have communities. Most servers, like, I used to play on a server called Alonzo's Horde, and that server has like 1 guild on it now. Because people just didn't want to play there anymore. There just wasn't enough people to recruit, and people slowly moved away. Getting groups for stuff just became an ass ache because you'd have to wait hours to find people and get there and do the dungeons and stuff like that. But Dungeon Finder, queue up, 20 minutes later max, you've got a group. And Blizzard makes smart business choices in the fact that what was it, Scroll of Resurrection they brought out recently. Bring back an old friend, they get a level 90, they get upgraded to Cataclysm, so they're ready for Mr. Pandaria, you know? Like, stuff like that is very smart.
That was really good.
Now you make a really, really good point there that just made me, like, fucking grin from ear to ear, man. Now, I spoke about how the community is what it's all about, right? And these other games sink because they don't have a community in the end. After the game's, you know, the original launch and everybody gets to end game, people don't want to play it. Well, WoW has a very distinct way of handling that, don't they? When people don't want to do something, they give them something else. And when people don't want to do that and quit, they bring them back in some way. Now, whether it's, you know, they try to, like, bridge that gap, don't they, right? Where you think, like, oh, fuck, it's getting boring trying to find groups for this 5-man that I only need one piece of gear from, so I'm just going to stop doing it, and if I stop doing it, I'm likely going to quit, kind of thing. That's you know, the general thing. So how they combat that is they put the looking for dungeon system in. And that bridges that gap entirely. It's like, fuck it, well, I only have an hour to play, so if I didn't have the looking for dungeon, I wouldn't even be able to play. That's a brilliant choice on their part. And anybody, like I said, anybody who thinks you know what's going on in the heads of Blizzard, you think, oh, they're ruining the community, ruining the game, you're a fucking idiot. They have single-handedly saved the community with some of these changes. There are some delegated things that might not have, you know, worked out exactly how they wanted them, but for the most part, they make the best business decisions of any game I've ever had a part of.
Exactly. I mean, replayability is a huge thing in any game, but Warcraft has done it so well. I mean, Transmog. When Transmog came out, how many people went back and actually did the dungeons? I mean, I did. I wanted to get the best looking gear. But when Transmog became boring, you know, they've made twinking awesome. You know, there's so many things you can do in the game, but so polished and so thought out. Even if it pisses off a few people, the majority still love the game. At the end of the day, you know, there's always something to do. That's what keeps
and you
them
can't
coming
please
back.
everyone. But the biggest problem is, you know, you can't have everyone happy. But when you say, like, well, these people, I don't want, you know, we're not raiding, right? Our guild raids only twice a week. So what do we do for the other 5 days? If there was only raid content, we wouldn't play the game. We would only play the game for 8 hours a week. But luckily, there's other engaging things to do. And more importantly, we have friends who fucking play the game. So instead of just, like, not associating with them in game, we just force ourselves to maybe go do some achievements or 5-mans or some other shit while our friends are there in Vent having fun. And that's MMOs, ladies and gentlemen. That's a massively multiplayer online experience. Every other fucking game has failed at this. That is the crux of why they have failed. Some games did well, some games did really well, some games did terrible. And the games that did terrible because they don't have anything to do in the game that keeps people online to talk with the friends they have in the game. It's like, fuck it, I don't want to play this game, I'm going to go play League of Legends instead. I'm in Skype though, you want to hook me up, you know, something like that. But in WoW, you find people just sitting around. Like Diabolical, a guy in our guild, he used to just sit in org for like hours upon hours for no reason. But what are you doing, dude? He's like, nothing. I'm just sitting here. Like, what? You know what I mean? Go play something else, but you don't want to because you want to be in the fucking game with your friends, and that's what an MMO is supposed to be all about.
And that's exactly why I moved to your server, because you guys want to play with me, and I want to play with you guys, and it all comes down to friends. You know, it's a community, and once you lose one community, you join another. That's how you keep going.
The amazing thing with it is, as well, is it's like you'd be surprised how small our world is when it comes to World of Warcraft, right? Me and Metro, we have been in the same guild for what? Probably almost what 2 years almost now, and
Over 2 years.
yeah, and so there has been multiple occasions where one person in our guild I have physically met already that lives probably like 30, 45 minutes away from me. And then when it came to BlizzCon, there was a bunch of us that all from the guild all went to BlizzCon, hooked up, and just hung out. So not only is this game a great, it's a great game in the thought of, hanging out with friends and getting to play with them, but it also actually brings people together, whereas you meet new people that you probably would have never, ever met in your life. If you think about it, like, you're playing with people all around the world. Siler's freaking in the EU, and me and Metro are in the US, and, we may have never, ever met Siler if it wasn't for World of Warcraft, just due to the fact of, we never would have met him, because there would have been no reason to. And now, I mean, it's such an incredible thing how World of Warcraft is not only a great game, but it's also a great way to meet new people as well. And I find that incredibly just insane.
Yeah, truly the strength of the internet right there. That is what it's all about, just connecting with people from around the world. And I could say easily that I've learned more sitting in front of my computer talking with some of these people than I have like going to classes some nights, But ultimately, that's what I'm talking about. This is a massively multiplayer experience. And if the game cannot provide that, cannot keep people in the game long enough to provide that, the community will falter. I guarantee it. Okay, mark it down. It will happen.
Yeah, like, I really thought Star Wars would do well just for the fact of it already had a community. Like, unlike some of these games like Terror and things like that no one's really played or seen before, Star Wars has a huge following because Star Wars is quite a big thing, but it just didn't have people things to keep people in the game. Like, they'd get to max level and be like, well, I can either do these 3 battlegrounds over and over and over again and end up playing the same people because I'd end up with football like 90% of the time, or do a very limited amount of dungeons and raids. Yeah, exactly. So they just didn't have... It's unfortunate because one thing I'll disagree is, like, the game is good, but it just hasn't had time to grow. And that's the problem with it. Most of these MMOs, people kind of compare them to WoW in the amount of content that it should already have in the game when it launches. And most of them just don't have that much content. Most of them start with a very, very small amount. Well, yeah.
There's no way. Because even if a game came out tomorrow, like a new Terror or whatever, if it cloned WoW and stuff, it'd come out with such small amount of content that, people... It really comes down to what people want to do. And if people aren't going to be given the same amount of content as WoW, they're not going to play it. And at the end of the day, nothing can beat WoW because it will steadily, well, it won't even steadily, it'll keep growing and growing and growing, and there'll always be something to do until Blizzard go, oh right, well what we're going to do is we're going to either upgrade the engine or get a new game. And it will be them that decide that. Not anyone else, not Terra.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think some of these MMOs, given the chance, could do very well. But they just need that time to grow, and people just aren't willing to give them that time. But Star Wars has made some very smart choices recently, and I'll give them that. They've made it so people can transfer for free, which is great because some of the servers, people quit because some of the servers were just like dead and people would stop playing. And they're looking to make a free-to-play model, which obviously you'll probably still have to buy the game, and they'll have to implement some form of like microtransaction system. But that I'll play again if it's free. Hell yeah, why not?
Definitely. Which brings the question as to why games decide to come out and be rivals to WoW and aren't free to play in the original payment model. There is no way in hell, as a business decision, you would go into the MMO market against WoW and decide to make it pay to play. Not a chance.
Exactly. Like, most people only have the money for one MMO, and why would I choose a newly started MMO that has limited content over WoW, which has an endless amount of content?
What?
Yeah.
I also think I think a good thing to do would be to compare the vanilla World of Warcraft, right? The very first the very first basically World of Warcraft that they released, right? And then compare it to some of these new games that came out and see what it's like. Because that would be really, really interesting to me. Because if you think about it, in the original World of Warcraft, right, There wasn't raid finder, there wasn't group finder. It was, slash join trade, looking for group, Skullmans or whatever the heck it was. And at the time, the game was almost 100% different than what it is now. Back then, they were not looking for casual players, right? The game was almost completely revolved around the longer you play our game, the better and more gear you will get. That's what it was revolved around. Because if you think about it, Grand Marshal, that you had to literally have no life for like a month and just sit in Battlegrounds to even have any hopes of getting that. And that was almost playing every day, 6 hours probably, just to get Grand Marshal. And the people that did raiding, I mean, they raided almost probably 4 to 5 days a week just to get the content down. And also, it was 40-man raids. It wasn't the stuff that we have today where you could go 10-man or 25-man. It was 40 people. So, I mean, if you think about it, the game then, compared to what it is now, is almost 100% different. And I think if some of these MMOs had come out when WoW was in its infancy, I think they would have stood more of a chance, because then, people could have been like, oh, well, I don't like this hardcore style of game where, you have to play so much to get anywhere. So instead, I'm going to go play this, more casual game. But now that WoW has implemented, a huge ability for casual gamers to get a level of the gear that hardcore raiders do, it makes it so that almost every type of player that would play an MMO would want to play WoW. And that is what most games, I think, don't have. And I think that's why a lot of the games do kind of fit.
I completely fucking agree with you, dude. That is such an astounding statement you make there. Unreal. But you have to realize this. WoW made these things, right? Star Wars wouldn't be Star Wars if it didn't have WoW to copy some of the ideas off. You know what I mean? These things are not like, these games steal things from each other all the time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But, games that came out around the time WoW, they didn't have the features that they would need to compete. WoW was basically EverQuest with the WoW universe, you know what I mean? And in the beginning, sure, the game was hardcore, but they were already making concessions, and those concessions were, like, absurd. Like, look back in the beta, when you died, you lost experience. When you died, you lost experience in the original game. So their concession to that was, you don't. You know what I mean? That was their concession.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it, alright, we'll just take that out. Or, like, if you logged off, you're obviously not gaining experience, so they give you rested experience. That was their concession to the casual fan. And then as more people come in, they're like, oh, fuck, I can't do this, I need that. Blizzard just keeps making these concessions. And at some point, I feel like it's like a stumbling giant walking around. It's just going to trip over its own feet and fall flat on its face. But that is ages away, because the community is just so enthralled with the game at the moment,
So, what do you think an MMO has to do to compete with WoW, if that's possible?
You know what? Go for it. You guys go.
I don't think it's possible. Well,
This is. I'm gonna explain to you what an MMO. This is gonna blow your minds. All right. This is what an MMO RPG has to do to compete with WoW. It has to, first of all, let's examine why WoW is popular. Okay. There's a very, very definite reason. It's not just because it's a good game. Okay. WoW came out as StarCraft, or what was it? EverQuest 2 or whatever was waning. That was the MMO to play. Everybody who wanted to play an MMO played that game. That was the WoW before WoW. So that game came out when EverQuest was waning. In the fact that the developers weren't making new content for it. The game was being outdated rapidly. That's one thing. Second thing, an already established IP. Warcraft 3 is still fucking played today. Okay, there are still a ton of Koreans out there who play that game, and a few Englishmen. But for the fact that alone brought people, like, I didn't know what an MMO even was when I came out. That game was, I was like 15 when WoW came out. I was like, fuck it, I love Warcraft 3. I was a pretty good player at it. So I'm like, I'm gonna check this fucking game out, and I got drawn to it, Also, the game had a lot of stuff to encourage people to play it. There was, like, the community side. People were interested in the lore. People were interested in the gameplay. People were interested in PvP. And those kind of things are why WoW succeeded. Not because it came out at a good time. It came out
exactly when it fucking needed to, and it already had a player base. So, ergo, in order to compete with WoW, you have to come out when WoW is dying, which it is not. Okay, go fucking, get fucked if you think it is. It is not dying. Second of all, you have to have an already existing player base, something that Star Wars did, but didn't execute the other things. And you have to have something that keeps people in the fucking game. You can't just have, like, you get to max level and then there's nothing to do. You have to have some grind. I know people don't want to grind, but there has to be a grind. It's a fucking game. You can't not have a grind. There has to be something to keep people in the game long enough for them to develop relationships with the characters in the game and the people playing the game. Those are the only ways that any game is going to come out and compete with WoW. Unfortunately, all these games, Terra did a good thing. They had good combat. That was interesting. But it came out at a terrible time. Like, as soon as Diablo came out, that's it. Terra's done. You know what I mean? Shit like that. It's really unfortunate. But you have to have at least 100,000 people that want to play this game and want to keep playing this game, and it has to come out at the right time. You can't just release it in the middle of the fucking year.
What do you think, Miona?
I honestly think that Terra was rushed because, quite honestly, the beta didn't go on long enough, and the Korean version didn't have the bugs and problems that the EU version had, and that's mostly down to the person of a publisher that we have in the EU, which I want to slam into the ground, which is Frogster. Now, Frogster, I've got a massive thing against because they took a game that was working perfectly, that had all of this extra content and had this player base, brought it over to EU. Took away all of the things that were somewhat difficult. They said that the battlegrounds wouldn't work because they were too difficult for European players. They said that the end game was too difficult, so they had to completely redesign that. They can't, for some reason, they can't work out how to sync a cutscene with English voiceover. There's just so many problems that they haven't got through that should have been fixed or addressed in beta testing, or even back in alpha. But no, they decided to do a beta as soon as someone else did a beta at the same time, and then they rushed it straight out, and people were really pissed off. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, you can't release a game that's not finished. The Korean version absolutely shits on the quality that we've got, and it's all down to the decision to run it out as fast as possible to try and make as much money as possible. And I think that's what harms games, the business decisions behind them.
Yeah, that, as I said before, business decisions are what makes them WoW what it is now, because Blizzard are very, very good. Even though some of them people may not agree with, some of them are great. Some of the business choices may not be great for the actual audience at the time, but they're great for the growth of the company. And at the moment, I think Guild Wars 2 could have been a competitor to WoW, but because it has a great model in terms of being aimed at casuals, because that's what a lot of the audience has grown to be, a very high casual audience. But it does things poorly. It still doesn't appeal to the people who don't want to be casual, and that's when a game will always fail. It allows you to jump into the game and be max level and do max level PvP with a preset of gear. You can do the events whenever you want. You can go back. Yeah, that's what I have a problem with. But
you
there's
get
no
all these
content.
abilities, like 50 abilities on your bar. You're like level 3 and you decide to queue for battlegrounds or whatever. You get scaled up, you get all these abilities, filling all of your bars. You don't get told what they do, you haven't had time to use them. What is the point? Why? Why is that a thing?
Well, the combat feels very spammy to me as well. When I played it, it was literally in PvP, hit all the buttons off cooldown. There was no, it didn't feel like there was any skill involved. It was just hit buttons off cooldown. And the fact that if you actually do make it to high level, you already have the preset of gear for PvP. I think you can get an upgrade to that, but even so, why, when you can have a preset of gear at low level, why bother leveling? And there's no high-end PvE content. Yeah, there's these world events, but there's no progression to do it, kind of thing. If you get something from it, there's no progression after that to kill something harder, because you don't need to. You can just go to do the event and there'll be 20 people there that you don't know killing it for you. So it's well, what's the point in me progressing my character? There is none. I don't need to. I just can log on and do a BG log off,
which is directly the opposite of what WoW's doing, because they're actually trying to take people out of the game, saying that they don't actually have to put the time in. There's no carrot on a stick to keep them playing, and that's why that game will not win.
And I think
Exactly.
it
People
goes
just
back
won't
to what
play it.
Metro said. It all goes back to what Metro said. I really strongly believe this, that the only thing that will be able to kill WoW is WoW itself. The only thing that will be able to take it down is if they decide to release a new game or literally somehow find a way to kill the community, which probably wouldn't be hard for them. But that I believe is literally the only way that another MMO will be able to come out of the ashes, I guess you could say, and somehow manage to become almost as popular as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Guild Wars 2 did some things right. I mean, it's already got the community behind it from Guild Wars 1. It's free to play. You just buy the game and that's it, which is great. But then it failed on the things that matter as well. It got the strong other points, the business points done, but it didn't get the gameplay points done, which is really unfortunate.
That's a good point, actually, what you've just brought up. It's free to play, so do we really... I mean, do we have a right to compare free-to-play games to pay-to-play games when they're in a completely different league? I mean, is that something we should be doing? Because it's quite intelligent, actually.
Because they have, like, people always say, like, WoW should be free and why am I paying less than this a month? But you're paying that a month to keep the game as good as it is. You're getting patches every couple of months which have so much content in them for $8.99 a month. It's like, what? Why are you complaining? You get an unlimited game for $8.99 a month.
Yeah.
Before I played WoW, I used to buy games every month. £30-40 games that'd finish within a few hours, and that'd be that. But WoW gives me all this content all the time. But Guild Wars 2 is going to have some form of, like, microtransaction system, or they'll bring out content a lot that you have to pay for, you know, to make up for that. So I think pay-to-play and free-to-play are very similar. They just have different ways of getting the money from the audience, pretty much.
Love it, but on that topic, believe it or not, we have been talking for 35 minutes already.
Yeah,
Well-
all right. I got a good way to wrap this up. All right, let's do this. Here's a perfect way to wrap this up. We're gonna go around the horn and ask everybody to contribute a few factors that other games had or didn't have, or what you would want in a game. If there was one game, a game that we could make to kill WoW, what would it have? Start with Fast Feed.
I really don't know, man. I think, man, that's a really hard question. I think I really love the achievement system in WoW, and I know we would be trying to make a game that's not like WoW, but I really do think that the achievement system is almost almost in itself a complete reason why some people do stay and play WoW, because they want to try to get all the achievements. So I would think of I would try to get a system that would be like that. That I think would be something that I would try to strive for.
Okay, so your game would have a strong achievement system. Good idea, I think. My game, if I play World of Warcraft for well, two reasons really, but one reason and one fucking reason alone, because I want to fucking heal people who are taking damage in a raid. Okay, so I would have a system. I don't know how we would work it, but it would be a system that you could raid all the time. Like, instead of 5-mans, I would have different raids that you can do. I would just I don't give a shit what you do. Just take 5-mans out of the game. Okay? In my video game,
Like a
no
persistent
5-mans.
world.
What's that?
Like a persistent raid system where it would be active all
Well,
the time,
basically,
drop in.
But something that I could do that didn't require, like, you know what I mean? Because now if I want to do like stuff in WoW, I could do raids, but I gotta find groups, and looking for raid, it's dumb. So I went, instead of 5-mans, just take fucking 5-mans and battlegrounds and all that bullshit out of the game, and give me more raid content, stuff that I could do every day of the week if I wanted to, and if not, there would be no punishment for me not doing it. That would be the singular most important part of my game. The one thing that I have a problem with Blizzard is, like, look at what we've been killing heroic fucking Dragon Soul for like 8 weeks now, and there is no end in sight. You know what I mean? We're gonna be killing it for another fucking 8 weeks, and that shit's been out since November. So that's fine. I know they're taking time to develop the game. They have to do that. But if there was something new that they could just release to like stir my interest for another month, that's what my game would have. Siler, what would your game have?
Well, saying that just like sparked my mind. Like, that raid thing would be interesting if maybe in WoW or maybe in another game where the old raid content that you may not have done as much or whatever can be brought up to your level, so you can go back and do any raid. So you can go back and do TK and it's level 85, or go do I don't know, Nax, it's level 85 or whatever. You know, it all like scales up, so it's still a challenge and there's different fights. There's hundreds of mechanics in those different raids, and then you'd have loads of choice. You wouldn't be, and you'd be able to get the gear for transmog or whatever, but you'd still have a challenge. It wouldn't just be going in there. It takes 2 minutes to just face roll it. So that'd be awesome. I don't know. Obviously, it's going to be harder than that to just put into the game, but yeah, that'd be an awesome feature in WoW or a new MMO. But to say some, like, what I do in WoW is I love the grind, the achievements, the mounts, the pets, all that stuff. And there's not really been any other MMO out there that does that well, which has always disappointed me, because I tried Star Wars and I played that for a while and was hoping to make some like pet guides from it, and they just never came. And I was like, oh right, well, I've got nothing to do in this game then. And I went to Terror as well, and there was, well, to be fair, there's a lot of like rep grinds and stuff like that in the game, but they're not the same as the way WoW does it. It's not as, like, I don't feel like I'm achieving as much. Yeah, exactly. So I'd have a game that's got a strong sort of like mount, pet, title kind of reward system in the game, and achievement. And finally, Mione, what do you think?
If we were to create a game tomorrow that would rival WoW, I don't think that would be a good idea, even in the slightest, to aim it as a rival from the outset. But if I was to make a perfect game, let's say, like a game that I would love, as much as WoW still sucks me, and even though I quit several times, I think it would have to have, you wouldn't really have to change much about the basic WoW mechanics, because obviously they've pilfered everything from every other game that's tried to be something anyway. So you'd have that same system, but I really think that combat needs to be something that I would, you know, because when I play Terra, it really feels like an accomplishment to actually kill something with skill, pure skill, like moving around and aiming everything. I think that's something that I would definitely want to see more of, but I'd actually like to see a company support a game like that properly. So in my ideal world, I'd have a game like Terra, but with more content, more stuff to do, more replayability, you know, better communities, maybe even make Terra free to play. I mean, that would make my day, to be honest. But I don't think it would be a rival to WoW unless you did make some significant changes to any mechanics, really. But yeah, that's my ideal game.
Yeah, I definitely think the combat in WoW, that's what a lot of people complain about, saying the combat's too easy, and the actual mechanics and the fights and having to do it as a raid aren't easy. Like, no, by far heroic modes weren't easy in the beginning, otherwise everyone would have done it. But the actual combat for yourself is very sort of straightforward. It's very like, I know my rotation so much that I don't need to look. Yeah.
It's like when you play a first-person shooter, when they brought out like DualShock on the PlayStation, for example, people with controllers and stuff, I mean, on there, I mean, that's another subject for another time, because a lot of people love keyboards for that, but the feedback of that, you know, the feeling that you are actually controlling that guy, that sort of thing, I'd love to see more of. More tactile interaction with the game environment would be something that would definitely pique my interest.
Definitely. It needs to be more involving. It would be good. But yeah.
Instead of just going 1 1 1 1 1 1 2.
Yeah. Well, it's not quite that straightforward. Before people go crazy and like, "Are you a noob?" But so that was a look at our first podcast, and we hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any recommendations or ideas for the next topics in the future, then please leave some comments and feedback in the comments below. We will definitely read them and get back to you. So, I've been Sile with AceGamesTV, and see you next time.
Bye.